This is Moshe Taragin. I'm in Rambam Hospital in Haifa, and is north of Israel. My son Noam was severely injured about 4.5 weeks ago. He suffered a direct drone attack in Lebanon. He serves in a Golani unit, and Baruch Hashem, we have been zocha to endless, incredulous nisim from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The type of attack he and his friends were exposed to is not the type that you survive naturally, and he did. And we've been working hard to help him recover. And sometimes when you hear news reports of terror incidents in Israel and no one was killed, so you breathe a sigh of relief. There's no hutar lepersum, but the p'tsuot koshot or p'tsuot koshot, and it takes months. So, Be'ezrat Hashem, thank you for those who have been davening. If you haven't heard, my son's name is Noam Avraham Ben Atara Shlomit. Please keep davening for him. And I found a quiet studio in Rambam Hospital to record Parshas Miketz. I had pre-recorded several of the earlier Parshos in my home, so hence the familiar home setting. But here I am in Rambam Hospital late at night on a Thursday night. Next week there are a lot of curveballs that always hit you, so having a little bit of time late at night. So I'm going to discuss Parshas Miketz. Parshas Miketz is part of a 6-scene drama, 6 scenes or 6 acts, and you have to read the end of Sefer Bereshis in a meta fashion as one incorporated storyline beginning in Parshas Vayetze, with the departure of Yaakov to Aram Naharaim and the emergence of his family, concluding in Parshas Vayechi. And there are character transformations and changing family dynamics and fluctuations in the family. And within this very riveting drama, 2 dominant personalities destined for leadership who tussle with one another emerge, Yosef and Yehuda. And who will carry the mantle of leadership, and who will bear the responsibility of monarchy, and who will carry the family through the Egyptian diaspora, the Egyptian exile. And there is one question which haunts the entire 6 Parsha story. It hovers above the entire Parsha. It's implicit. What happened to Reuven? Where did Reuven go wrong? Reuven is the biological firstborn on all fronts, both father and mother, maternally and paternally. And why isn't he a candidate? And the truth is, Reuven appears in almost every Parsha. There's a Reuven section in Vayetze. There's a Reuven section in Vayishlach. There's a Reuven section in Vayeshev. There's a Reuven section in Miketz, which I'll hopefully Be'ezrat Hashem speak about because it is Parshas Miketz. And there's a Reuven section in Vayechi. Reuven doesn't really appear in Vayigash. So let's talk a little bit about Reuven, especially through the lens of Parshas Miketz. And I want to discuss the second of the 2 Reuven moments in Miketz because it's bizarre. The children have returned home. They've been accused of espionage. Shimon is incarcerated. Things are bleak. And their only ticket to Reuven's freedom is to draw Binyamin down to Mitzrayim, which is part of Yosef's plan, part of his ruse. And Reuven tries to convince Yaakov, Es shnei banai tamis, im lo avienu. You can kill my 2 sons if I don't return Binyamin, excuse me. This is a very bizarre offer. Let's play it out. Let's assume Binyamin doesn't return. So now that's going to assuage or console Yaakov by murdering his 2 grandchildren. And Rashi already quotes he paraphrases Yaakov's shock in Bechor Shota. This is a silly proposal. It's a ridiculous proposal. Immodest proposal. So what was Reuven thinking? And how did Reuven even conceive of this notion that his 2 sons should die if he fails in his mission? What does this mean? Where does this come from? So, to better understand this bizarre proposal, we have to zoom out and understand who Reuven was, step 1. Step 2, witness that coming to the surface, that coming to the fore in a different Reuven moment in Parshas Miketz, again in a way that's unhealthy. And then we can circle back and better understand both why Reuven even imagined this as an offer, and why this invalidates Reuven to be the leader. So Reuven is a very, very sensitive, feeling, compassionate, sympathetic or empathetic person. And there are 3 moments of sympathy in Reuven's arc. One is in Parshas Vayetze, one is in Parshas Vayishlach, and one is in Parshas Vayeshev. So again, you have to thread all these parshios together. In Parshas Vayetze, it's the harvest season, so let's say it's around September time, and everyone's very busy counting their beans, gathering their grain, cashing in on a year of agricultural toil, consulting with their accountants. And Reuven knows that his mother is still suffering, Leah, because Leah's as we would say, the ugly duckling in our jargon. She's not Yaakov's beloved wife. Rachel still remains Yaakov's, and it can't be an easy life to be constantly the disgruntled and the disfavored person. So he decides he's going to bring his mother some flowers. Now, what dudaim are, in modern Hebrew, there may be roses. Chazal say, Rashi quotes, there was jasmine, something fair-smelling. Doesn't get into what it was, but it's just a very romantic moment in which I don't know how young he was, but which he cares about his mother. And if he cares about his mother and he's willing to bring her flowers when everyone else is busy, b'mektzir chitim, everyone's really busy with the harvest in Parshas Vayetze, his care for Leah erupts. Many would say in an unhealthy way in Parshas Vayishlach, Vayishkav Reuven as Bilhah. And there are some opinions in Gemara and Shabbos that this is actually, as it suggests, an illicit interaction. But many positions, and Rashi quotes this in the Gemara and Shabbos, he's quoting Chazal, Reuven did not commit this crime. He was rather protesting on behalf of his mother. He was defending his mother's compromised dignity. It's one thing for her to be disfavored and discriminated against vis-a-vis Rachel. But now that Rachel has passed in Parshas Vayishlach, Yaakov evidently continued to show favor to Bilhah, and that infuriated Reuven, and he protested. And maybe the protest was inappropriate because he was sticking his nose into his father's private and personal business, but you sense that he cares deeply about his mother. If he cares about his mother in Vayetze to bring her flowers, and he cares about his mother's pride in Vayishlach to protest Yaakov's favoring of Bilhah, well, he cares about Yosef's health and well-being, and he saves Vayetzilah min habar Vayishma Reuven, and he hears, and there the word Vayishma doesn't just mean to hear auditorially, but to understand the stakes. And lo nakenu nefesh, and we will not kill Yosef, and he saves Yosef. Sadly, maybe I'll talk about this in a few moments. Sadly, he doesn't complete the act, doesn't fully rescue Yosef, but he tries. He tries. He's the only one that tries, the only one of 10 who try, who feel Yosef's pain and agony and suffering. So taken all together, this is who Reuven is. He's a very passionate, feeling, sensitive young man. But here's the challenge. Sometimes when you are sensitive and you feel deeply, you can feel too deeply, and you need a thick skin, and you need sometimes to detach yourself, and you need sometimes to balance your emotions. And I feel probably we live in an age in which people can exert greater sympathy and greater sensitivity. So I think the problem is not oversensitivity. Someone used the word, which I'll use just because it struck me. It's a little bit uncouth, but I think it's an important word because it creates graphic sense of, I use the word emotional constipation, where it's just their emotions that can't come out. Again, we tend to use the word constipation about a biological process, but it can mean anything gets stuck and it doesn't exude. And so many people have a hard time sensing other people, identifying with other people. We're in a fast world. We look at screens, and screens don't look back, and screens don't have emotions. But people who are excessively sensitive can sometimes feel emotions too deeply. And if there's one emotion that you feel too deeply when you're sensitive, and we know this emotion, it can be obsessive and it can consume you, it's the emotion of guilt. Now, whether guilt is an emotion or mental frame of mind, that's a very, very touchy, sensitive question. Let's call it emotion for now. It may not be an emotion per se, but the experience of guilt can be so overwhelming and so compulsive and so consuming, and it can lead to despair and to incapacitation and paralysis. But guilt is important. Modern psychology has tried to erase guilt from the emotional lexicon, from the emotional vocabulary. It's not your fault. You can find some prior cause to attribute it to. And guilt is the whisper of a healthy moral conscience. When your moral conscience whispers to you there's something wrong, and you have to take responsibility and accountability and regret and remorse. But too much guilt can paralyze. And I think Reuven is just too guilty. Everything that happens, especially the event of Bilah, and possibly even his ineffective rescue of Yosef, just makes him feel very, very guilty. He lives with guilt and he doesn't manage it in the way that a leader should. And this brings us to the other Miketz moment. Remember, we'll go back to that first Miketz moment, which is really chronologically second, but first one I discussed when he offers his two sons. But the other Miketz moment is when the brothers are accused and they're being manipulated and exploited in Egypt, and they're being taken from room to room and from interrogation room to interrogation room. And they connect the dots, they put it together. They get the fact that this isn't just incidental, this is payback, this is comeuppance for their crimes. Avol Hashem Manachnu, and the Gemara actually says in Yoma that some of the Amoraim paraphrased the brothers when they recited their shortened vidur. Their vidurs were shorter than ours on Yom Kippur. They just said Avol Hashem Manachnu, which is confessing guilt. So that becomes the gold standard, that becomes the bar of vidur. And then in the next pasuk, Reuven says, Halo amarti aleichem, didn't I tell you, al techatu bayaled? V'ata hine damo nidrash. I don't have a chumash in front of me, but it's more or less that pasuk in Perek Mem Beis. And what is Reuven saying? They already accepted guilt. They already took accountability, responsibility. Reuven effectively does two things. Number one, he throws him under the bus. Halo amarti aleichem. He's right. He tried to rescue Yosef, but now in Egypt, far away from home, it's all for one and one for all. It's not a time to take again, those who don't follow sports, to throw your teammates under the bus and point fingers and accuse it. Leadership is not blaming. Blaming is such a toxic way to speak. If you're looking to clean your tongue up, try not to blame people, even when they are to blame. Just hold it. If you've ever been blamed unfairly or consistently, you know how irritating it is just to hear the voice of blame. So Reuven is blaming his brothers, and rather than just saying, "Look, we'll make it through this together." And the second issue is he escalates. There is a danger here, there's a peril, but they'll find a way out of it. They'll find some Egyptian lawyers, a dream team of Egyptian lawyers to exonerate them, to acquit them. We're going to die, and we're all going to perish, and it's all is lost. And leadership demands calming the situation, lowering tension, speaking softly, creating calm amidst the chaos, and handling it together, rather than divisiveness and you versus me and blaming and accusation. So you just see how deeply guilty Reuven feels, and the guilt comes out not in the right way. It comes out in escalation, we're going to die. It comes out in blaming and accusations. So is there anything criminal about Reuven? No, absolutely not. I wish we all had the sensitive heart of Reuven to buy flowers for our mother, to protect her dignity, and to hear the cry of a brother when no one else wants to hear that cry. But like everything else, it has to be balanced. And it's like a river. And we need a river, and a river provides life. When the river overflows, it creates a deluge, and it causes, destabilizes, and it overruns, and that's why Yaakov refers to Yosef, to Reuven in his Vayichi moment, Pachas Kamayim Al Tosar. You're like a river, and the river is health, and the river is emotional health, but there's too much. So this is the portrait of Reuven that emerges over the entire 6 Parsha section. Deeply sensitive, deeply caring, deeply sympathetic, but laboring under the heavy, heavy burden of guilt, not being able to manage his guilt. So this brings us back to the crazy, bizarre proposal to kill my children, as Rashi says, B'chor Shota. Reuven desperately is looking for closure. Reuven is desperately looking for catharsis. Doesn't know how to get it because he's got two notches on his gun, 2 notches on his belt, 2 issues he's wrestling with. 2 issues. One is his complicity in the Bilhah episode, whatever it was, not something that ended up being favorable. And second of all, his failed and futile attempts to rescue Yosef. So he's carrying a lot. And he's looking for some way to purge the guilt. And he looks at his brother Yehuda. And Yehuda also dealt with a lot. His whole embroilment and becoming embroiled in the Tamar episode and marrying a foreign wife and ignoring his daughter-in-law who'd been twice widowed. And it's just, Yehuda's carrying a lot. But what punishment in Reuven's mind did Yehuda receive that allowed him to get past his guilt? Well, Yehuda, lost 2 sons. Er and Onan, his first 2 sons. And in Reuven's mind, this was cathartic for Yehuda. And this allowed Yehuda to get past it. Now, I don't know what Reuven saw. We don't really see Yehuda speaking from Parshas Vayeshev till the end of Miketz and the beginning of Vayigash. So we don't really see Yehuda on stage. But in Reuven's mind, the way you get past guilt is by being punished. A lot of people like to punish themselves or like to look for punishment in their lives and try to connect, this is why I'm suffering, because it's very easy. Then you have quid pro quo and tit for tat. And okay, now I know my suffering, I've been purged of my sins. And it doesn't work like that. We don't really know why X leads to Y and why. Because I'll say, Yifashvesh b'maisav, Yamashmesh b'maisav. Obviously, when Puranas come, when Yisurim come, you want to find ways to improve, and it's a call to improve in Barur. But to be able to say, oh, this is restitution, or this is comeuppance for this chay down past the chay. It doesn't work that way. You have to face guilt, take ownership, take agency, perform tshuva, and just live with the debris of your behavior, rather than looking for these forms of unhealthy catharsis. So that's really the only way to understand what Reuven was thinking. And Yaakov obviously is just shocked by the idea. Doesn't absolutely no interest in his 2 grandsons being slaughtered or being taken. So that's Reuven. Reuven is sensitive. Reuven feels guilty. Reuven feels responsible. Those who are firstborn know what I'm talking about. I'm a firstborn, and you have more responsibility for the family. You take all of the family's baggage and you carry it with you. You feel that role and that responsibility. Anyway, I hope in Meretz Hashem that my son continues to improve. Maybe the next year will be recorded from my home. Maybe it won't. We'll have to see. Ezrat Hashem, wherever we're in Eretz Yisrael. So can't be too bad. Shabbat Shalom.